Hello, this is Mike Van Meter, and welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast. And I want to thank you for joining me. You can reach us at our Facebook site, which is also called Recovery is Possible, or our website, which is vanmeterwellnesssolutions.com. And this podcast exists to educate the public about addiction, remove the stigma associated with addiction, and offer help and support to those who are still suffering from addiction. And this episode is sponsored by FHE Health, a substance abuse and mental health treatment center specializing in treatment for first responders' needs, including PTSD, anxiety, and substance use. So take the first steps to a better life today by visiting FHEHealth.com. So folks, today I want to introduce you to a friend of mine that I met in the graduate program that I'm in right now, and I'm working on another degree in addictions and co-occurring disorders and working towards licensure as a therapist. And in this program, I'm meeting all kinds of wonderful people, fantastic people, and today's guest is one of those folks that I want to introduce you to. And he is someone that has been in my cohort, and it turned out that we do weekly meetings, Zoom meetings, and I found someone that had a law enforcement background, and I immediately lit up because there aren't many people that come into this field with my kind of background. It's a very different sort of clientele that come into this program. But this young man came in, and he has a law enforcement background, and I thought, well, look, I got somebody like me, and we've struck up a relationship, and I consider him a good friend now, and asked him to come on to the program and talk about his experience, strength, and hope as it relates to addiction. And his name is Brian Granneman, and he's down in Florida, and I wanted to introduce him to all of you, and he can give you his message when it came to his background and where he is at today. Because if he and I can do it, you can do it. And I just wanted to share his story with you. So with that, Brian, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. And thanks, listeners. Appreciate having the opportunity to share my story. Honestly, I can take very little credit for it because it's much more of a victory of 12-step programs and me just getting out of my own way. But so as Mike had shared, my background is in law enforcement. I've got kind of a long story, but that is basically where I'd like to focus on it. I started drinking in college, and I entered my law enforcement career in my early 20s. I think I was 22 or 23. And as we know, that addiction is a progressive illness. Was very quickly promoted through ranks of police investigator and sergeant, which is the first line supervisor. My alcoholism had also progressed just about as quickly. And so some 12-step literature refers to someone in active addiction as like a Jekyll and Hyde, and that is definitely part of my story, was that my identity as a police officer was always adherence to the law and always doing what's right, and there was no getting away from that. But my personal life, I found that I was a very, very different person just because I was so self-centered. And I can recall taking a personality test at one point and having a difficult time with this personality test because I was like, which one are we talking about? Like the law enforcement identity or this person who I am in my personal life? And so let's see here. Yeah, the alcoholism had progressed pretty quickly. I was a 7-day drinker, and law enforcement usually works like 12-hour shifts. So on days off, I would drink a lot more. And on days that I would work, I had kind of found this like scientific calculation of how many drinks was I able to have and still keep my breath alcohol, should be approximately around 0 when I'm going into my shift the next day. Thankfully, I can, by the grace of God, I can say that I never reached a point of needing to drink while I was on the job. But certainly, this scientific formula that I had, calculated, it became not enough. And I had no peace in my personal life. I was highly, highly anxious, and I wasn't able to sleep. And so that was a big theme of something that had kind of launched the drinking, was just this looking for relief, right? It goes all the way back to college, that I can remember starting a pattern of going into a bar first and having a few shots before an exam, because it would take away the test anxiety, and then I could think more clearly. And to this day, I think that I'm still somewhat an anxious person, but I've learned a lot of the tools in recovery to stay several steps ahead of that anxiety so that it's not debilitating. I would absolutely, in this program, this master's program, we learn about all the disorders, and I definitely score high on anxiety, but there's definitely a spiritual solution. And for someone like me, who at some point probably would have identified somewhere between atheist and agnostic, to be where I'm at now, it's just, as you said, if someone like me can do it, there's absolutely hope for everybody. So getting into how my departure from law enforcement worked out, I was the subject of an internal affairs investigation from an event that had happened in 2015. At that point, I was just a police officer on the street. I hadn't been promoted to detective or any of that stuff yet. And my supervisor, my sergeant, was having an affair with a young lady in the community. And as you can imagine, it got pretty messy, and it went on for several years. And I really just tried to stay out of it, that I knew that this was going on, and I wanted to have no part in it. If an administrator pulls me in and asks me some uncomfortable questions, I'm going to be honest about what I know, but I'm also not going to go out of my way to try to, stir the pot for anybody or anything like that. Several years down the road, this had turned into a really, really ugly internal affairs investigation. Several police officers were fired for having sex on duty with this girl, and I had been tied into this whole thing, that there was text messages that showed that I had knowledge of this, and I did not come forward. And so I was made ineligible for promotion. A handful of minor disciplinary things. I think the chief was able to look at the whole situation and see that was a pretty precarious situation to be in, to make an accusation against my supervisor. Nonetheless, so we've got a ton of active alcoholism going on in the background of all of that. And I will fast forward to some of this stuff had resurfaced 3 or 4 years after the fact, because this young woman that was involved in this thing had sued the police department. And so it was getting a ton of media coverage, and a brand new chief had just come in, and she made it very clear, I don't know you from Adam, but I want you gone. It doesn't matter that this old internal affairs investigation is over with. The fact that I keep reading your name in the paper, we need you out because you are bad PR. At the same point, my battle with alcoholism had gotten to the point that I had finally was starting to get to that point of readiness. Now, I went to 12-step meetings pretty regularly for about 15 months before this point. And nothing was going to get in the way of me drinking. I hadn't lost enough at that point. There wasn't really much readiness. I knew that it was killing me. My blood pressure was pretty regularly about 190 over 110. I was on 3 different blood pressure meds. My resting pulse was like 105. I was in constant pain with, my organs, just, there's no question that at the rate that I was drinking and where I was going to die well before 50, if even maybe before 40. And I was completely okay with this, because that's what addiction does to us, is that I didn't care if I lost everything. I didn't care if I lost my family. I didn't care if I lost my career. I didn't care if I was homeless living under a bridge, as long as I had a bottle. And then nobody was going to tell me any different. And when I went to 12-step meetings and would read things on the wall about God and surrender, I was like, well, apparently the only solution must be suicide then, because I'm so far gone at this point that I know I can't stop. And if anybody thinks that I'm going to believe in God, that somehow just turning it over to Santa Claus is somehow going to make addiction go away, there's only one solution. And I know that you've been really real on your podcast about especially first responders and like addiction and mental health, and it all goes hand in hand. And you use the word stigma. Who does a cop reach out to when they have got all of this going on? We're supposed to be the ones that have it all together. And
people come to us.
So I was
not the other way around.
Exactly. And it's not something that's really commonly talked about in law enforcement. If anything, you might hear, like, so in Florida, we have the Baker Act, which is an involuntary assessment for a mental health related like crisis. You might hear that an officer had an incident, and, the guys in the locker room might be joking around about, hey, so-and-so is on the rubber gun squad. They took his gun away because, Baker Act, he couldn't, whatever. And, we cops, we can kind of be kind of brash and hard on each other. Now, I mean, I know that deep down there's a lot of love and in the brotherhood, and, we would never want anybody to, to go to those low points. But there is a tremendous amount of stigma, both with mental health and addiction. And addiction and mental health often go hand in hand. So I was placed in this real horrible position of, I either have to kill myself or I have to go to treatment. And I can't tell you how heavy that phone was to call my mom and say I have to go to treatment. And I think she had been expecting that call for a long time and was just kind of waiting for that readiness. And the second phone call was probably, the one that we all dread in law enforcement. And that was to my captain, which is the number 2 guy at that agency. And I said, I have a drinking problem and I can't stop. I've tried stopping. I've tried going to meetings. I've tried everything. And, drinking it's so prevalent in law enforcement. He's like, what do you mean? Like, you had a couple too many? I was like, no, man, like I had too many for like 15 years. And like, and as soon as the light bulb clicked on, because like all I can think about is, how's this going to affect my career? What about this? What about this? And what are the guys going to think? What if there's gossip? What if people find out? And his only response was like, oh, well, we got it covered, man. We just want you to be better. And the shifts were short, but no one had a single clue why I needed a month of leave. Sure, rumors are rampant. Is it this? Is it this? Is it an internal affairs investigation? But the administration kept it pretty tight-lipped, and that was pretty impressive. But so I came back from treatment. I'm back on the road as a supervisor on day shift, under a lot of scrutiny now, a lot of eyes on Brian and what's going to happen. It's because the administration knows what's going on. And 60 days sober, more headlines came out. And the chief had pulled me into her office. She took my stripes. I was demoted. I was sent sent back to patrol, skipped investigations, do not collect $200, right back to the beginning, where I was put at an intersection at a school to count if kids had bicycle helmets on or not. So it was like absolutely humiliating. And so the chief lets me know this nightmare will continue until you leave. And
Wow.
it was upon this ugliness, I'm sparing a lot of details just for brevity, but it was upon all of this ugliness that that night I went home and I was faced with this. So I went to a meeting because I was terrified that I was going to relapse, but I knew that where I had been and the amount of pain that I was living in, that even though this was bad, my past was worse. So I went to a meeting, and I can remember, it's like 8:30 p.m. meeting, in just total desperation. There was like 3 people in the room, and I said, "What do I do?" And someone said, "You need to reach out to somebody and be helpful to somebody else." Now, this is like where the story starts getting awesome, because I had never done that before. So I did just that. I called someone not to complain about my situation, but just to say, "Hey, what's going on in your life?" And it just so happened to be that he was a veteran who was thinking about what his AR-15 would taste like. And we had a tremendous conversation that who knows if it saved his life that night. But this guy was also struggling with PTSD, depression, alcohol use disorder, just a host of things. And it was a great conversation. And that was the night that I prayed the third step prayer. Now, I didn't know who or what I believed in, or if I even believed in God. At that point, I don't think I did. But I knew that me trying to run the show was not working. That every time that I was doing this, I was burning my life to the ground. It was nothing but consequences. I was always trying to force my way, and it wasn't ever working. And so it was the first time that I had ever said a prayer, in my own words of like, help me get out of the way, because clearly my way is not working, and I don't even know what your way is or who you are, but I just know that I'm not the center. I just know that my way isn't working. And the very next day, I was asked to resign, and I was like, okay, so I pray, and this is the solution. Is like, this is my identity. I don't have a plan B. I don't know how to fix cars. I don't have HVAC. I can't build anything. I don't have any experience other than law enforcement. No plan B. And, I had talked about how I was highly anxious, and I cannot explain this crazy spirit of peace that washed over me as I went in and turned in all of my gear and drove out as a civilian with no police or authority powers, and just a regular Joe. And I had nothing but peace. I wasn't even angry at the situation. It was where on earth could peace like this have come from? And so I worked the steps, and I worked them the same way that somebody who is dying would do the work, because I was absolutely convinced that relapse was not an option, and that if I missed any part of any of this, that it was going to take me back to square one, which was, scary from where I had come from. And so I had a tremendous amount of bad PR that was following me. I applied for jobs for 3 or 4 months, and Mike, I couldn't get jobs scraping barnacles off of the bottom of boats. washing windows, no place would hire me. And I was so discouraged, but I kept praying. And it was for the first time that I wasn't telling God or spirit of the universe, however you choose to pray. I wasn't saying, I really need this. I really need this. Because the history of my prayers had always been, I really screwed this up and I need to get out of this. And often that didn't happen. And then I got angry at God, or I was like, there's your proof that there's no God. No God would allow this to happen. But I learned how to reframe this prayer, that it was no more about, let this line up, I really need this job. It was just, help me have patience until your will is done, and so that I can just stay out of my own way, so that you can open up all of the right doors. And the rest, it was effortless, as long as I could stay out of the way. And I'm not saying that it was easy to have patience, but I learned that patience through that process, and I continued that prayer. And I came to believe in a higher power that I feel comfortable calling God, but it was quite a journey for me. So if the word God is off-putting for you, take it with a grain of salt, take what you like and leave the rest. But all of a sudden, all of the right doors started opening up. So I got this career working as a child protective investigator. That is not something that I would have ever thought of in a million years to do. I had no interest in it. And this thought just popped into my brain. Where? Why this agency? They just said, apply here. And I did, and I got hired right away. And it opened the door to mental health. And it was a great transition for me, because I still had like that state authority. I was still doing investigative work, but now I was doing it more with a lens of, these are parents and these are families that need help. They need access to treatment, as opposed to, this is somebody that needs to go to jail. This is somebody that I need to bring to justice. And none of this is an overnight matter, right? So I stayed at that position for a year, and as it would have it, this higher power put my supervisor at that agency was an ex-cop who guided that process from being a cop to being in mental health. And another thing for me is I have a history of getting complacent, that when things are okay-ish, not real happy with it, but it's like it's working and it's paying the bills, that I'll just kind of do it. And I probably would have gotten complacent there, but I believe that there was a bigger, better plan for me. So once again, the universe or God, or however you want to look at it, allowed life to get kind of unmanageable at that position, to gently, just like I was kind of pushed out of law enforcement once I was willing to surrender and get out of my own way. Once again, I was kind of pushed like, yeah, you've done your time here and it's on to the next thing. So it just so happens that I get this random email about an open house for this graduate school program online. I'm like, why? Sure, why not? I'll just attend this thing. And it all just kept falling into place. Who would have ever thought? Now, I didn't think I would ever go back for a master's degree, ever. I never would have thought that I'd be in the opposite chair in an office. 3 years ago, I had been the one the client in the chair that's like, I just want to be happy. Why can't I stop drinking? Why can't I get my life together? Why am I, living so opposite to all my values? Why can't I stop? And to now to be the one that's helping other people figure that stuff out, it's absolutely incredible. But who would have ever guessed, that not only would I get into this program, but that I would excel so well, that I'd become the cohort representative. Mm-hmm. It's like one thing after another, they all just started falling into place. And So here's some other just like crazy things that started happening. When it came time to look for placements for clinical stuff for the graduate school, I had let a few people let me know, like, this is going to be very challenging in this area of Naples, just because of like Florida licensure, and other students that have gone through this have had some problems. It's not going to be an easy road. Well, how about this? The person that I interviewed with for my first placement was an addiction tech at the place where I got sober. What are the chances? And then the person that I'm at my site now, that's my supervisor, was a liaison that I had worked with when I was a child protective investigator. It's like, are these coincidences? I don't know. But it just seems like there's been so many coincidences that as long as Brian can stay out of Brian's own way, things align the way that they're supposed to be, or even better than I would have ever imagined if I had been the one in management trying to do the planning. So, I don't know where I'm going to end up. I don't know what the future holds for me, but here's what I do know is that when I try to be in control and when I try to run everything, it's usually a disastrous result, or it's definitely not as favorable as it would have been if I could have gotten out of the way. And sobriety has not been easy, but it has been tremendously rewarding, and that's where staying connected with a program has just been so important. So in my time of getting sober, I was in an internal affairs investigation. I was asked to resign. I was demoted. I was unemployed. I was unemployable. Let's see, I went through the end of a relationship that someone that I thought I was going to marry. I was planning on adopting kids with, having a family with, like just one storm after another. But I can say with honest truth, I have never, ever, ever once been thirsty through any of that, because working a program has always given me peace through the storm and the ability to ride through the storm, up and down the waves, and the storms pass. And a tremendous amount of strengthening has come through a lot of hardship in recovery. So what does recovery look like for me today? It's really simple. Rule number one, probably common sense, right? No matter what, I'm not going to have a drink today. Easy peasy. Instead, I need a solution since I'm taking something out. For me, that solution is I wake up and I connect with my higher power. You call it prayer, meditation, whatever you choose to. I read some spiritual literature, which could be sometimes for me it's biblical, sometimes it comes from 12-step recovery type stuff. And I meditate on it, I apply it to the day. How is this, even if it's something I've read 10 times, now I've got new eyes from new experiences over, every year. I go to a meeting. I'm not perfect. I'd say for the first 2 or so years, I hit a meeting 7 days a week without fail. Now it's probably 5, maybe 6, but I definitely make an effort to do that. I talk to others in the program every day. That I must. 1, 2 people on the phone, or even if it's just a text check-in, I stay plugged in, and I do some service or step work. And we know that there is no cure for addiction, but what I just laid out has been the treatment for me. I recognize that I wake up every day with untreated alcoholism, but if I do those things, I've been stacking a lot of 24s, and as long as I can stay out of my own way, the universe or God, higher power, has just unfolded one miracle after another in my life, and there's been quite a transformation too, because people who knew me from my law enforcement career, now this is a result of the step work and the change that happens in recovery. But, I was very much a brash police sergeant and detective. And, people that don't know that chapter of me, they're like, I can't even imagine it. You're so calm and you're like very even keel. And, no, I was very much what we think of when we think of a police officer, like commands and command presence and, barking orders, and this is the way it's going to be. And, when I was in law enforcement, I hate to say, but, my compassion was kind of limited. I looked at a lot of situations very black and white, and I didn't really care what the surrounding circumstance was. Either you did it or you didn't. And you're going to jail, and I don't care what your story is, you're going, and that's it. And now as we've shifted to mental health, there's certainly not that I don't think that people should be held accountable. That is not the case at all, but I'm definitely able to look at it through a new lens, especially when you start looking at a fleeing and eluding case. Like, man, that's something that any of us that's like really juicy if we're in law enforcement, right? Because it's like, how dare they're challenging me and my authority. But like, when I look at that through the lens now of, this is a person with like mental health issues and addiction on top of it, like, yeah, that makes sense. That they're afraid or they've had other bad experiences with the police. Like, I'm not saying that this person shouldn't be held accountable. I absolutely believe in accountability, but to be able to see that full picture, you wouldn't see me ripping somebody out of a car and screaming at them and everything else. It's going to be, man, you're sick, buddy. But we if somebody like me can turn it around, there's hope for anybody. So, yeah, that's my Reader's Digest version.
Wow, that's a really just a powerful story, and I appreciate you sharing that. And let me just take a break real quick. We're going to talk about our sponsor, and then I've got some follow-ups for you, if you don't mind.
You bet.
Okay. So this episode is sponsored by FHE Health. FHE Health has been providing life-changing behavioral health services for more than 20 years, and they treat substance abuse and mental health disorders in an individualized and comprehensive approach. Recognizing the specialized treatment needs of the first responder community, they've created Shatterproof, a dedicated program for law enforcement, fire rescue, and similar communities to receive treatment among peers. They're experienced in providing privacy and working with unions for employment. FHE Health is committed to providing the best care experience for our patients, for their families, for our community. So learn more at fhehealth.com. So, Brian, you talked about, being in law enforcement and how difficult that is. And so there's a number of struggles that you had, and law enforcement wasn't the only area that you were struggling with. I mean, law enforcement is an area that makes it difficult because, step one of a 12-step program is I'm powerless over alcohol. My life has become unmanageable. And that powerlessness part, I mean, that what do you mean I'm powerless? I have to, I can't will myself through something. I can't conquer this thing that I'm facing. And that I find in myself and people that I work with now, that concept of the powerlessness part, everybody struggles with that, but it seems like this community in particular, it's very difficult. Would you agree with that? And if so, how did you address that part of it?
Absolutely. In fact, I think that like steps 1 and 3 of 12-step stuff is particularly challenging for law enforcement, or for first responders, because like we're taught from the beginning in academies and stuff like that, that no matter what, you don't surrender, you don't stop, you don't stop. And so to have to challenge that, it's like it went against the core of everything that was my identity. And as far as the first step, sure, I knew my use was problematic for a long time. Dogs knew it, but was it unmanageable? No, man, I got this. I'm still going to work. I'm still a police sergeant. I've still got it together.
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot of what I like to refer to as field research and demolition. Like, how many times am I going to wake up with consequences before something finally clicks? Like, at what point is bottom? We said, like, some people, bottom is a scratch on the Rolex, and for some people it's almost being dead a third time. And for me, I hadn't lost everything. I'm a quote unquote high bottom alcoholic, but it was certainly bad enough that I had created enough emotional pain and enough damage in relationships, and especially, nothing worse, I think, than not having a recollection of what you've done, and like seeing that look on people's faces that they're just like, again, you did it. And, that's just, it might take several years before you finally get to the point that you just say, I cannot keep on this life one more day. I can't do this. Mm-hmm. I can't do this one more day.
Mm-hmm. And the scary part is that at that point, even you want to stop. It's not even just the people around you with those looks on their faces. It's you. I mean, right, I shouldn't put words in your mouth, but you wanted to stop. You knew that it needed to stop at that point. And that's the scary part, isn't it?
Definitely. And so, that's the other thing that I think is really important to be talked about, is that, so I'm at a point of willingness, but like, I'm so sick that I need treatment. It's not just enough to send me to a meeting an hour a day. When you get to a certain point, alcohol can affect your neurochemistry to the point that for you to just stop, you need detox. You're at risk of seizures, of all sorts of stuff, and you really need a medically supervised detoxification, and that's certainly where I was at. That is not something that I could have done alone. So if that resonates for anybody out there that's hearing that, if to thine own self be true, if you know that you're getting to that point, that you're getting kind of shaky and that you're having a hard time functioning without it. It's been a long time that you can even think of that it's been more than a day that you've gone without drinking. There's a good chance that you might have to do that with some medical help.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Oh, in fact, it's advisable because many of the listeners may not realize that you can die from alcohol withdrawal. A lot of people don't understand that. If you're getting to the point to where you're having to drink just to function and be normal, then it's likely that you're in that category where you need to be medically walked down, medically detoxed from alcohol.
Right.
And that's where I was at the end. It sounds like that's where you were at the end. And, definitely be very, very, I would highly advise against just withdrawing from alcohol on your own. Seek medical treatment on that because, like I say, it can be very, very dangerous. And, Brian, I really appreciate your story because there's so much that's there. And, you also talk about the struggling with the higher power part of all this. And what's funny that, where I work, the treatment center that I'm interning at right now, we have patients that are in that situation. They're near-death experiences, or they were found face down somewhere, and they come into treatment, and within a day or two, we're talking to them, and they struggle with this idea of a higher power, and it's amazing. And I kind of somewhat joke with him. I go, let me get this straight. A couple of days ago you were on the brink of death, and now you're, all of a sudden you're a theologian, and your biggest issue is that you're struggling with the idea of God, as if that's really as though that's the biggest issue you're facing right now. But people really get wrapped around the axle with that, and it sounds like you did to a certain degree as well. But then you were able to work through that. How important do you think the idea of a higher power is? And, for those that are struggling with that issue and listening to this program, what advice can you give someone that really struggles with it's funny, we weren't thinking about God at all, or the concept of a higher power, and now it's like the biggest issue to us. Tell me about that.
Yeah, right. Definitely. So, for me, I love the way that the second step was worded, that it's came to believe. And, I think that for some people that might be a long process. You can still start to work, another step. You can start turning it over, your life and your will, or over to the concept of God as you understand God, whatever that is. But for me, at the beginning, I was at least able to get on board with the thought of, well, a group of people that I'm in treatment with being run by a clinician who is trained in this is definitely a higher power than Brian. And that is perfect as a starting point. As long as you realize you alone in the driver's seat is not working. And for some people, that might take several years of research and demolition. But once you get to that point that me driving is not working, there has to be something else. Yes, absolutely. The God, that can be a very not palatable word for many of us. And it certainly was for me in the beginning. At the beginning I had shared, if the choice is either a spiritual solution or drinking myself to death, I choose drinking myself to death or suicide, because I didn't see a spiritual solution being possible. But it started with the idea of group of drunks, or good orderly direction, or it could be great outdoors, or however you choose. All I knew was something bigger than me has to help me. Me trying to do this on my own clearly has not been working.
Yeah, very well said. And then you talked about the coincidences too. And it's funny, nearly everybody I talk to in recovery talks about how the further along in recovery they are, the more they start seeing patterns of our higher power, or whatever it is, the universe, whatever you want to, however you want to term that. It seems like things just start to fall in place. And right. I love how you say that you really just started asking for patience and understanding what the will of your life is, because we don't always know what that will is, right? And being open, willingness is another part of recovery, just being willing to just accept that there is a plan for my life. And I don't always know what that plan is. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And so, I have clients that will ask something similar, well, what exactly is God's will? And I'm like, well, we can certainly start with what we know God's will is not. Right. And that would be for me to drink a liter of vodka a day. We can get that one right off the table. And seems like as long as we use a starting point like that, and also Brian not in the driver's seat or in the passenger seat, or preferably even in the back seat. If I should be anywhere, I should be in the trunk, just along for the ride. Then things go pretty darn smoothly. So, it's, I don't know what all the cards hold for me, but I can tell you that as a result of working those steps, and the literature says painstakingly, like that if you really do the work, I can tell you that even though I don't know what the future is, I have a lot of peace about it. And, for someone that's a high anxiety person like me, to be able to have that kind of faith to just go, I don't know what it is, but I know that it's going to be good. And that I'm not just telling myself that or trying to encourage myself like an affirmation in the mirror, but that I really know that, because, I got to that point because of faithfulness. I don't want to try to make it too spiritual, but I'm results driven. And when I've seen the results are consistent, it deepened my faith that as long as I stay out of the driver's seat, it just all seems to be really good.
Mm-hmm. So as you sit here now and you work through your program, as far as you can tell, or let me ask you, what is your desire in the path that you're on now? You're in a graduate program, you're working towards licensure. What is it that you want to do with this?
See, that's so tough, because when I started in here, I thought all I want to do is work with first responders, because we're such a unique group and hard to reach, and it kind of it takes someone who's really been there in the trenches and knows what it's like to be on the opposite side of all the scrutiny with the public and everything else. But, and then I thought, I really want to work in addiction because I'm really passionate about addiction. But as God has kind of directed me now more towards I've been working with clients with severe persistent mental illness. So the ones that have, a lot of the hallucinations and voices and delusions and stuff like that. And so it's just I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I just know that I'm going to be useful, and I'm really excited about that. So hopefully I can continue to work with first responders. I'm very passionate about first responders. Coppers are real close to my heart, but I'm open that wherever the universe decides that the doors are going to open and I'm going to I'm not going to try to force my will. No, I will work with cops. I will work with PTSD. Water finds its own level, and I'm going to end up drifting to where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's a great outlook. And I love that line, water finds its own level. Things will take care of it itself. And that's a really good way of describing how you stay in the present, in the moment, focusing on where you are right now and just being open to how you're being guided. And I think that people that don't understand recovery, those that are struggling with recovery, that's a part of it, right? We catastrophize the future. We try to force things as opposed to allowing things. We prepare. We do the best that we can every day, and we do the best we can to prepare ourselves professionally, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all those different things, physically even. But we have to just be willing to just follow the guidance and follow where we're directed to go. And that's part of the serenity that we have. Because as I listen to you now, I really get a sense of serenity about where you are, who you are, and the situation that you're in. And sounds like you've come a long, long way from where you started.
I'll tell you what, people who haven't seen me in a few years, they're just they can't believe it. Oh, so yeah, here's another one of those God moments, or those just interesting connections. So I had connected with a therapist that I was seeing when I was in active addiction, and I was trying to get my stuff together. And I connected with her several years sober and in this master's program. And she was blown away. She was like, I can't even believe that you're the same person, because it hurt my heart how hopeless you were. And you're conquering life right now. And I'm like, it's not me. Literally the only thing I do is just try to stay out of my own way and don't drink. And that's it. And, the rest has just been, it's been the victory of 12-step fellowship and the people that you meet there, that I just keep, all the right people just keep popping into my path. Like you said, it's hard to meet other people that have any kind of a law enforcement perspective with counseling. And, what are the chances? What are the chances in as big as the United States that I'm in a program with somebody that, has gone through, so much of a similar story. And, it's just, there's no coincidences, man. It's incredible.
No, that's why I was excited when I saw you in the program. And I said, yay, somebody like me. Because there just aren't many, people like us. And a lot of that is the stigma, which we're working on very hard, to eradicate. And that's one of the purposes of this podcast, is to destigmatize, recovery and let people know that it in fact is possible, and you can live life without alcohol. In fact, your life will get better. It can't not get better. It has to get better. And there is hope. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're somebody that's struggling, just know that you can get well. And I know in my life, one of the few things I did right early on, and that was continue to show up. Even when I was still drinking, I was still going to meetings, and just show up. You just keep showing up and showing up. And hopefully the seeds will be planted, and eventually they will take root. But you can't give up. You just can't give up. And I love how you say that, sometimes when you just get out of your own way, things will happen, because we oftentimes, in fact, I won't even say often. I think that all of us that struggle with this, we are our own biggest enemies.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We do more harm to ourselves than anybody else does to us. That's for sure.
Right. Totally agree.
So, Brian, for the last few moments of the program here, just a key takeaway. What one thing would you say to anybody listening right now that is struggling? If you just have one bit of advice, what can you give that person?
Boy, it's not all going to be done overnight.
No.
And just keep coming. That was probably the most important thing that I heard, because I left so many meetings like angry at the stuff that I heard, and people just kept saying, just keep coming, just keep coming, just keep coming. And I did. And like you said, the seeds were planted, and my heart was really closed off to those seeds for a long time, but a couple of them did take root, and I can't even explain how my life went from barely surviving to thriving in every aspect, and how beautiful my life became from being a former disaster, and that just recovery is possible. That hope is just so critical. And so I hope that someone is inspired by that story, that, definitely sparing a lot of details, but I am a former dumpster fire. And if recovery is possible for a mess like me, it's possible for anybody. I promise you that.
Oh, that is so true. And what a great message. And Brian, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story with us. And I'm sure we can have a number of episodes, because in your story, there's so many different things to talk about, so many different angles to approach this at. And I think that's true of everyone. And, I really, really appreciate you coming on. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for giving my program a platform. Like I said, it's really not a Brian victory. It's that I got out of the way, and that some amazing people showed me how to live.
Yeah.
So it's their victory, not mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And folks, it does work. It really does. And so this episode has been sponsored by FHE Health. According to SAMHSA, first responders are 30% more likely to develop behavioral health conditions like PTSD, and FHE Health specializes in getting first responders better and cleared for duty. So find out more at FHEhealth.com. And guys, like we always like to say, I don't represent any group, and neither does Brian. we're talking about different groups, but we don't represent any of these groups. We're just talking about our own experience, and we don't represent anyone other than ourselves. And our only purpose in giving all of this information is to share with you what we've done, because it's helped us, and maybe it'll help you too. So if we've said anything that doesn't apply to you or you don't agree with, then just discard it. But you know what? Try to take in information that you can use for yourself and use it to help others as well, because you know what? That's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we help to impart that knowledge that we've gained to help others as well. And so with that, please visit my Facebook page, which is Recovery is Possible, and our website, which is VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com, and let me know how I'm doing. And let me know if there's a topic that you're interested in hearing about, because we'd love to hear from you. So reach out to us and let us know if there's that topic that you want to hear about. Brian Granneman, thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next time. You take care of yourselves. Bye.